Hi all, hope everyone is well. Just thought I'd come on to introduce myself. My name is Laura and explain why I created this page to tell you my story in terms of diagnosis and symptoms and treatment. And then get some feedback from you really in terms of what content you would like to see. Reason I created this group or page, whatever we want to call it, is I was diagnosed with MS last year. I also have a pre-existing condition of my bladder, urinary tract, kidneys called embedded chronic UTI or QT for short. It's not that it's a rare condition, it's very difficult to diagnose and treat, hence not many people have heard of it. So I have that condition and I have MS, and the two together is a recipe for disaster. Extremely challenging to manage, and I have struggled to meet people, anyone really, who suffers with more than one disease and is finding it challenging. So I wanted to try and connect with people who maybe have more than one thing. There's so many people out there with MS. There's got to be people with more than one illness, right? MS is an autoimmune disease. Some people have multiple, and some people it doesn't. Unfortunately, having MS does not stop you getting other diseases. So my hope is that this brings people together who have multiple conditions, and they can come forward and share their experiences, make friends, network. I would just love to hear from some other people that are struggling like me with more than one condition. I'll give you a high-level overview of my diagnosis, treatment and symptoms and my other condition. And then I'm going to just open up the comments for you guys to see who else is out there, basically. Is anyone else out there? There's got to be other people with more than one thing. So I have, I'll tell you about the secondary condition first of all, because I acquired that first and foremost. It's called embedded urinary tract infection or chronic UTI, QT. It is a very misunderstood condition. It's not a UTI, a urinary tract infection, as people get. So people can get acute UTIs and they're quite common. This is not that. This is a condition where an acute UTI turns chronic, whereby the bacteria, for some reasons that researchers are yet to discover, but potentially due to the immune system, an issue with the immune system or hormones, there is something that is causing that bacteria to become embedded within the lining of the bladder. And what that means is the infection lies dormant or causes low-level symptoms on a 24/7 basis. And then some sort of triggers are different for everyone. That can be stress, coffee, alcohol, breathing in the wrong way, viruses, sex, exercise. Literally anything can be a trigger, and each has their own triggers. My triggers are endless, if I'm honest, so I won't even go there. I'm particularly hard to treat as I am quite sensitive to a lot of the antibiotics that are used, and my body is very, not sure what other way to describe other than delicate. It's been really hard to find a treatment. Unfortunately, I've had this condition for around 13 years now, and I am being managed rather than treated. So I don't know if I'll ever be ridden. This is the MS talking, if you know, you know. I don't know if I'll ever be rid of the disease, and the treatment journey has been extremely difficult. It has taken over my entire life. From being 20 and I'm now 33. It has stopped me doing many things that I wanted to do, and yeah, it's changed my life in a lot of ways. In terms of the positives, I have met the most caring, kind, compassionate friends, people that you will ever meet. And my friendship circle is extremely small but mighty. I have the most amazing circle around me. So the positive thing is it has kind of long-term chronic illness, as most people know, does kind of show who your real friends are and who is there for the long haul and who isn't, and that's okay. You know, not all friendships were built to survive the storms. So I've had that condition for a very long time, and it is very impactful on my life, and I find it incredibly challenging. So had that for 10 to 13 years, being managed or not managing, as we say. And then June of last year, as a lot of people with MS, they start with, some people have a massive relapse. They end up in hospital with some form of dramatic symptoms, numbness, blindness, deafness, speech impairment, and they do an MRI and they are immediately diagnosed. For me, it was slightly different. For a number of years, I had very subtle symptoms that I put down to side effects of antibiotics and medications and just being generally unwell with a chronic infection. So fatigue, pins and needles in my hands and feet. I thought I had antibiotic-induced neuropathy, which is quite common if you're on lots of antibiotics. They wreck your gut, as we know, and that can cause an array of symptoms and problems throughout your whole body. However, it is what it is. It's the only management option for the condition. So I don't want to take these drugs that are wrecking my body, but it is the only thing to try and manage it. Otherwise, it's a case of sepsis and good night. So yeah, anyone out there who... We're not here today to talk about that. We are here to talk about the MS. So that to one side. I am here because I want to meet people with coexisting conditions that are finding it challenging to manage both and how they manage both. So as I said, I started with some low-level symptoms, which I put down to other things, until June 2023. I was gardening one day and I got some soil in my eye. Common, happens, the wind blew. Washed it, and the next day I woke up and my vision was slightly different. So I felt some pressure at the back of my eye. Vision, I wouldn't say it was blurred, but it was as if I needed some new glasses and suddenly my eyesight was slightly worse. So initially I thought I had an infection in my eye. So to cut a long story short, journey of going to the opticians, GP, ophthalmologist. I was referred for an MRI to check if I had an infection or some debris stuck at the back of my eye that they were unable to see. So I was quite surprised that the MRI appointment came through within 24 hours of the request being put in by the doctor. I actually got a call to book the MRI on the way home from the doctors, which I found very odd. If you're in the UK and you obviously use the NHS, you'll know that wait lists are incredibly long, and scans especially. You know, you're waiting 12 months to 2 years sometimes for urgent scans, unfortunately. It is what it is. So I was very surprised. However, the person on the phone assured me that it was due to a cancellation. So had my scan, had no concerns. I was absolutely convinced that I had some sort of scratch or infection or bit of soil, something at the back of my eye. So I got on with things. July came around, it was my birthday. I went out driving a boat for the day. This becomes significant because later that day I got home, was given all my birthday cards from my family. Some of my posts still went to my parents' house because I hadn't changed my address over with my doctors as at the time. So as I was opening the birthday cards, there was a letter in the midst of those. I opened the letter, and it was a letter from the eye doctor writing to the neurology team, and it outlined the results of the MRI that showed extensive damage throughout the prefrontal portions of my brain. Apologies, can't get my words. The front part of my brain had extensive scarring throughout. They're called lesions, scarring, and I do have a degree in neuroscience. Definitely not working in that field now, but many years ago that is what I wanted to do, ironically. So it was, for me, textbook when I read the description of the lesions. I knew immediately that I had MS. It was literally like it could have been taken out of a textbook. I actually had a textbook upstairs from many years ago when I was at uni that outlined classic MS, and my MRI report literally mirrored that textbook. So without a diagnosis, I just saw the letter. I don't know if I was supposed to receive that letter. It was from the eye doctor to the neurologist asking to see me. So I had a few days to digest the fact that I most likely had MS. And I immediately, after a few days of being lay on the floor crying, basically, I rang the neurology team to ask, when am I going to be seen? Because this is quite urgent. There is a lot of scarring there and I need to be seen quickly. This is my brain. This is not a broken finger. This is not a cut. This is my brain and it's being attacked by my own immune system. If you're watching this, you most likely know what MS is. It's basically where the immune system mistakenly attacks the myelin around your brain and central nervous system, so brain and spinal cord. It mistakenly attacks this, thinking that it's an infection, when in fact it's not. It's attacking itself, and it causes extensive scarring throughout the brain and spinal cord. So you'll see a lot of people with MS with cognitive impairments and physical disabilities. So I was told that the wait to see a neurologist was over a year. As you can imagine, that was quite devastating because I was in a state of pure panic. So I paid to see a private neurologist in London. At that point, I did not care how much money it cost. I wanted to see the best doctor that there was. And this particular doctor had done some research with regards to chronic UTI, embedded UTI, QT, and MS. So I thought, wow, this doctor is the perfect doctor to see. I want to see this person. Booked in with her. So I saw her in September. So the letter came in June. September, I got the appointment. And I was diagnosed more or less with MS. She said, look, we can either, in terms of official diagnosis, we can either wait 6 months, and if a second MRI shows further scarring, then we can officially diagnose MS, or you can have a lumbar puncture procedure, which will show, can't remember what the term is, but it will basically show kind of the extent of the immune system attack within your central nervous system. Goodness, I can't remember the name of what they were looking for, but that would clearly evidence a diagnosis of MS. So I had that done. Those who are apprehensive about having that done, I will say it is extremely uncomfortable, and aftercare is extremely important. I can talk about that another time. Anyway, I was diagnosed off the back of that. When you do get diagnosed with MS, they run a full battery of blood, so a full MOT on you to check for other conditions, because MS is very similar to other autoimmune diseases. They also found a few other impairments. I'll try and get rid of my Wigan accent there. With my immune system. So there is multiple things wrong with me here. I've got multiple sclerosis, I have this chronic embedded UTI infection, and I was found to have some abnormalities with my immune system that they, as of today, they cannot put a label on in terms of a diagnosis. It is indicative of lupus, though I do not have any symptoms of lupus. So that could mean that I may get lupus in later life, or it could just mean that I have a very effed up immune system and that's just the way it is. So that was my diagnosis. Now, having this embedded UTI condition means that trying to treat MS is incredibly, not treat, I'll say, I'm not really sure what the correct term is. You can't cure MS, you can only slow down the progression. And the treatments that are available to do that suppress your immune system. So the idea is that they suppress your immune system and therefore suppress the attack on the brain and the spinal cord, therefore slowing the progression of the disease. So there isn't a treatment out there currently that will stop the attack, but there are treatments that suppress the immune system to a point where it dampens down that attack. So you will therefore become disabled slower than if you did not take any treatment. So I had a very difficult decision to make, because in dampening my immune system would cause havoc for my chronic embedded urinary tract infection. I've had sepsis twice before, so for me that is a huge risk. To dampen my immune system could mean that my other condition goes out of control and I could pass away or have complications from sepsis. So myself and the neurologist had a really good talk about what treatment options, risks versus benefits. Two were discussed with me, one being Tecfidera, which is an oral drug that dampens your white blood cells. They're not 100% exactly how it works, but it dampens your immune response without kind of shutting off your entire immune system. It just dampens down inflammation and therefore that inflammatory attack. So it's not killing off particular immune cells like a lot of the other treatments. It's one of the more gentle treatments on the immune system, and therefore potentially wouldn't impact my embedded UTI to an extent. We looked at the side effect profile, and not one person in clinical trials had ever reported getting a UTI while on treatment, so that was very encouraging. The second treatment option that was given to me was Mavenclad, which is a chemotherapy type treatment. So Tecfidera is an oral tablet you take twice a day forever. Mavenclad is kind of a one-off treatment. You take it once. It's chemotherapy, a type of chemotherapy. You take it once for, I think it's around a month it lasts, and then you have a year gap, and then you take it again, and that's it. And both of these medications are categorized as good in terms of how much it slows progression compared to controls. It's classed as good. There are other treatments that are classed as high, so highly effective, good, or moderately effective. So we are looking in the middle part here for me, because we're weighing up trying to slow the MS down as much as possible without causing me to become severely unwell with the embedded UTI. So those were my two options. I went for the initial option, the oral Tecfidera, because I did not want chemotherapy, and there are very high risks with that, by the way, especially with my long-term infection. However, the neurologist said it's a front-loaded risk, so I am at high risk of becoming severely unwell initially, but then obviously that's it. after you've had the treatment, that's it. Eventually your immune system will build back up, and with that I would hopefully go back to normal following those 2 years. All sounds very simple, however, having researched and spoken to people, it takes a very long time for the immune system to recover. So I went for option 1, being the oral drug. So I started that around 5 months ago, and I struggled immensely with side effects. I was not prepared for the side effects. My gut is completely destroyed. I think part of that is due to me being on antibiotics all of the time also, so I think it just kind of added fuel to the fire. So I was swapped to a slightly different version of the same drug called Vumerity, which is supposed to be gentler on the GI tract. I am still very much struggling with those side effects, and this is a journey that I'm on. I'm not doing great. This is full transparency here. I look fine. When you look at me, you can't tell I have MS. My impairments or disabilities are only visible to those that know me very well at the moment. So I'm incredibly lucky. I am incredibly grateful for every day that it remains as it is. However, within the year of being diagnosed, I have had significant increase in symptoms, unfortunately. So I've not had my next MRI. It's not due till next, probably early next year, but I suspect that there's been quite a lot more activity. So to talk you through symptoms that I have: pins and needles in my hands and feet, that's pretty much constant. I have 3 numb toes on one leg, and I think 2 on the other. My big toe, I cannot move much. There's very little movement there, so the kind of nerve endings that within my feet are damaged. I have some scarring on my spine and neck, so I have quite a stiff neck, and my balance and coordination is off. Not to the extent where I need any aids for walking or I've had any bad falls. I have had some falls, I'll be honest. I've tripped and fell quite a few times, but I haven't injured myself, so that's good. The optic neuritis, so the pressure on the optic nerve, is still there. They say I have relapsing remitting MS, and that symptoms are supposed to relapse and then remit. With myself, it seems to be the case that it's day by day. One day the particular symptoms will be there, and the next day that symptom won't be there, but another one will be. Fatigue is huge. Personality changes, I've noticed it because I'm quite self-aware. So anxiety, panic attacks came from nowhere in January, no rhyme or reason. Makes sense given the area of the brain that's damaged. It's the area of the brain that controls your logical reasoning. So it makes sense that I've got some anxiety. I can be reactive rather than responsive at times, and I have to be very mindful of this at work because, something will happen and I'll just react. And, I've got to try and learn to sit back and think about it logically and respond. That is a very conscious thing I have to do now, whereas before that, that was second nature, to listen, take in the information, formulate an opinion, a plan. Now I have to really try hard. So it's not that I can't do things at the moment, it's that things are a lot more difficult. Traveling, driving, walking the dog, thinking, seeing, reading, speaking, all of those things are more difficult for me. So I'm not at the point where I'm severely impaired, although there are definitely days there are a number of days throughout the week where sometimes I can't get out of bed. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I can't get out the shower. I get what they call neurospasticity. Probably said that wrong. But it's very stiff muscles. And again, I have days where that's okay and days where I physically really struggle. The worst symptom I would say is muscle spasms. So that is where a muscle, usually it's a big muscle like my thigh or calf, will convulse and spasm. It happens with my bladder, urethra, and in my kidneys too. Now, I don't know if that's the MS or the UTI or both, but that is absolutely excruciating. I literally have to lie on the floor, and I use, if anyone's heard of Wim Hof, the Iceman, he has an app with breathing exercises. I do those. I also take a few different medications to try and help with the nerve pain. I do have nerve pain daily. So yeah, I'm incredibly lucky in that I'm still walking, talking, seeing, hearing, but there are definitely impairments. I have tinnitus, obviously my vision's affected. Every body part is affected by this disease. I've ended up having teeth removed because I thought I needed root canals and convinced the dentist that although the x-rays were clear, I must have a dental infection of some sort because I was in agony. Turns out I was completely unaware that MS can cause nerve pain. Your jaw and face have a lot of nerves in. So, yeah, I've tried a lot of things to try and help, and my jaw is completely clenched. It is stuck. Basically, you can see I have some jaw definition. That is due to the muscles being incredibly tight and trapped in that state. And a lot of muscles within my body are the same. So those are my main symptoms. Were probably more I've forgotten about. You might have noticed my losing my words is a big one. I can't think of the word I need, so I have to use a different word, which is not the most applicable. So I can seem less intelligent than I am because I have to use less intelligible words. It is what it is. So that's my story. So to wrap up, I suffer with two diseases, MS and embedded chronic urinary tract infection. I'm under specialist for both. I'm in treatment for both. I just want to connect with people who have both and who feel comfortable sharing their experience. That would be fantastic. If you would like to see some videos about how I manage and how I'm managing different things, I work full time, I live alone, I have a dog, I have a life. I'm trying to manage all of these things with these symptoms. So yeah, I will do some videos on those kinds of things, or if you want to hear more about MS treatment, symptoms, whatever it may be, please just let me know in the comments, because I'd love to build a network and just hear other people's experiences. Anyway, that's all from me. Hope you have a lovely evening or morning, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you for listening.